All right, here we go. Here's a rare JCB video, right? These are not coming as frequently anymore. But we're still working on it. We haven't given up by any means. I know thousands of you out there are still working on it, maybe even hundreds of thousands. So we are going to continue along this avenue. Again, not as frequent, but I do want to follow up on the video I made last for JCB where we talked about the five, humor, music, writing, parenting, and spirituality, and seeing where we can find those in each chapter. Because again, I don't feel wrong, or I don't feel it's a waste of time to do a deep dive, deep analysis on each chapter, because of the way he advertises on the how-to section, looking for details, looking for themes, trying to build a mural, looking for colors. All those keywords lead me to believe, and the fact that, there's at least one clue in most of the chapters, and yeah, so again, that's why we're doing this, right? Don't feel it's a waste of time. If I felt it was a waste of time, I just wouldn't do it. Okay, so chapter 1, again, the last video, we broke down all 24, 23. We went through 1 through 23 and assigned one of the attributes to each chapter. Not that I think that every chapter has something, but I'd rather not try to guess which chapter is the filler or which chapter doesn't have a clue and get that wrong, rather than trying to overanalyze just a little bit, come up with something for every chapter, and then you just pick out, sorry, the pollen, you just pick out the weakest one, right? All right, so and full disclosure, this video right here, we're going to cover 12. So I'm going to split it in two because I think there's a lot. So we're going to cover 1 through 12 in this video, and the next video, probably in a week, will be 13 through 23. All right, so let's get started. Chapter 1, we have that marked down as P for parenting, right? And for this one, I'm keying in on the laser focused, his light blue eyes, and the street names. I'm just trying to think of anything in that little section where he describes his interaction with his son. And right, we know he has 2 kids, so he chose the son here. Trying to see if there's anything extra or there's anything I feel he's trying to draw us attention to. And so what I picked up on, I think, is the laser, his eyes shining like lasers into me. I feel like that seems like an intentional description that could have been described another way. The color of the blue, bringing his son's eye color into it. Yeah, I mean, I guess he could just be really proud. He really likes his son. That's a really defining attribute of it, and he wants to share that with us. Or, that could be a color significance. So again, I think this is one of the reinforcers for the color blue. And the street names, right? I went back and forth with the pink highlighter, but I mean, I definitely see that as something a child would do, just grabbing the nearest, not even the nearest writing utensil, but a writing utensil that stands out, right? So a thick pink highlighter, right? The Sharpie brand is what I'm picturing. It's just something that a child would gravitate to and draw, and use that to write, right? So I'm not really leaning much into the pink there, but I am leaning into the street names. He really defined an LA a street map, so I think maybe street names is something that might play into a part. Obviously, that's more of a boots on the ground clue. So I don't know. We're just trying to pick out things that relate to parenting. Just trying to think of what he could possibly be drawing our attention to. So just trying to spitball some stuff out there. So that's what I got there, right? Lasers, laser focus, light. Could be a light theme or a light color. Light could play into the colors, but it could also play into shadowed and light, evening, daytime, sunset, sunrise, just something out there, right? So that's what I wrote down. And again, the plan for this is once we finish all 23, then to go back, just like we went back at the end of when we did all the chapters, and see what we can draw, what conclusions we can humbly put forward. Okay, chapter 2. This one I've assigned music or art, and so what I got here is the line where he's describing his experience. He's trying to get hired, right, from this for one of his jobs in sales. So he says, I play in an acoustic rock band. Again, that could be a sound. It could be and we went through this rabbit hole months ago now about whole acoustic rock. Was that a clue in itself? That genre? It is a real genre, acoustic rock. Again, do I think he remembers word for word what he said in that interview? I don't think he did. He might have. That could be something that Well, and again, if you're in a band, you would definitely recall, out of all the shows you did, you were always asking to explain your sound, or, when you're talking to your promoter or trying to get booked, you would say, oh, we're an acoustic rock band, or, that's our style. But again, throwing it in here, is there a significance to that, to the story or the point he's trying to convey about presentations and about giving the presentation and assuming that guy, couldn't hear and the embarrassment he felt, and then later, going into the sales as a career because he wanted to make money? I don't know, but I just wrote it down because I'm looking for a musical tie-in. I wrote down acoustic rock sound. So maybe, do I think it's behind a rock? There is a lot of things in part 1 that draw you to rock walls, rock configurations, looking at rocks from up on high. That could play in later, right? So I wrote that down. Chapter 3. Here we go. We have this one as a writing. We're looking for stuff, keys in the writing, finer points, details. So this one, I'm surprised I didn't pick up on this before, where he says when he's describing, let me read it word for word from the book, because the quote is, "I borrowed his wisdom," which I think is pretty interesting. So we're going to chapter 3. Here we go. Page 43. The finer points of detail helped him relax and focus, and here he found a true sense of calm and joy. Joy, keyword, right? I borrowed his wisdom. If you don't remember this chapter, if you don't remember the point of the story, he's describing how all 5 boxes are handsome, fun, functionally one of a kind. He's talking about Seth's obsession for details. In this particular paragraph, he's talking about the inlay design work required Seth to do no less, this is a direct quote from the book, no less than 250,000 chisel marks upon its surface. So he sent a video of that process to John. John's looking at it and thinking like, well, this would drive me to madness. So Seth responds saying that the detail work puts him in a meditative state, and that Seth describes the finer points of detail help him relax and focus. So it's not really a chore or aggravating to do that. It's more of a meditative thing. And John says it's a 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a 4-letter sentence, very simple to round this up. I borrowed his wisdom. And there's no greater context for, did I borrow this in life, with this hunt, with any work projects I have to do? So I think it's significant. I think it's significant that he's talking about the finer points and finer details instead of being a chore or driving someone to madness. It can help you find joy and calm, and that's what we're looking for, right? We're looking for joy. It's one of the allegories, or one of the metaphors for the treasure he uses throughout the whole story, the whole book, especially part 1. And he says he borrowed his wisdom. So that's one of the big things I took from here, from chapter 3, page 43. You can read that. It's right at the top. I think that's pretty significant. I borrowed his wisdom. All right. Okay, moving on. Chapter 4. It's another writing. We're looking for another writing clue. And here we talk about, there's a library described where the character is going through and reading all the mineral books. Let's read that word for word. I think it's Rob. Blanking on his last name. Let's see. Filler. Oh, not where I thought it'd be. I write down page numbers for some of these notes, and some notes I don't. Excuse me. All right. Here it is. Young Rob had already won the hearts of elder members of the Columbia Mineral Society by speed reading their entire library of mineral books. This is a direct quote. All right, and so we're looking for winning, for treasure, for looking. There's nothing here with joy in it, but it talks about how Rob got his into them, and he talks about reading their entire library of mineral books. Right, so I think maybe that's significant because if we're looking for the five categories, right? Music, parenting, spirituality, personal stories, humor, and in those. Whenever he brings those up, or we're looking for those parts in the chapters, that's where we'll find something that's going to help us find the part 1 lion's share box. So is there something in there? I guess it'll have to wait till the end to see if it all comes together, right? So I just thought it was interesting that he describes that part, right? Speed reading their entire library of mineral books. I don't know. I mean, the whole point of the story is talking about minerals, talking about how Rob started out from a young boy to get into this, with a passion. He got into this whole world, how he earned their respect, how he got in at a very young age. Talks about later how he becomes, sort of a middleman. If we're looking more for writing and communication, talks about emails. Now, I don't think, full disclosure, I don't think there's a clue in the book about emails that you have to, email somebody or check for an email. I don't think that's the way it's going to go, but I just thought it was interesting. Here we go for chapter 5. Right, faith is the key word here. Faith is a 5-letter word. For me, I always look at 5-letter words because of the importance of 5 and 3 throughout this. So 5-letter word to me seems to be a key word. Anywhere where faith is described to be a key word. And I found a pretty interesting phrase here, undeniable knowing. Knowledge is something that we're looking for. So let's, again, I didn't write a page number for this one, but I'm pretty sure I remember where that's at. Chapter 5, faith is the, because we're looking for spirituality as a topic. So we're looking, it's right here in the front, right? Page 57. Recently had a conversation with a good friend. Again, the friend is unnamed, so is this a true conversation or not? Or is he making up this conversation to convey a point to us? Either way, it's important. His friend understood the word faith to be referring to hope. So that's something that he's bringing to our attention. It's not something that he defines it as, right? I've always understood faith as an undeniable knowing. So again, what we're looking for knowledge, we're looking for treasure, we're looking for joy. Wherever we see faith, in JCB's point of view, it's undeniable knowing. So I think that's important that you could apply that somehow whenever you see the word faith or a character or a story expressing undeniable knowing, you can relate that to faith, and that'll give you a hint. So what hint do we find in this one? I don't know. I think we're still in the, what I call the roadmap section. That's chapters 1 through 6. Some have it as 1 through 10. Some have it as 1 through 5. But the earlier chapters, I still think, tell you what to look for and how to look out. So I'm okay with the main takeaway from this chapter in regards to spirituality is that when you see faith, it's undeniable knowing. Okay, because the traditional definitions of faith are different. Some if you look at in the Bible, it talks about off memory. Faith is the I'm blanking on it now. With the evidence of things unseen, stuff that's hoped for. Right, so again, I apologize for those out there who are more well-versed in the Bible for butchering that quote. It's something I should have known. Anyways, but this is how he defines faith, right? Undeniable knowing, because I think that's important. Okay, moving on to chapter 6. Chapter 6, we're looking, very interesting that chapter 6 starts out with inspiration. Inspiration is another big keyword that we're looking for. Some people believe inspiration is divine, so again, he's calling your attention to possible definitions. Many say inspiration is a creative force, but you always want to look at his definition for it. And here we get a list. I think it's important to look for any kind of list. So when he talks about Angie Marie, let's see. I smiled when I saw that she had a blog dedicated to what inspires her. So he defined what some people define inspiration as, then he defines what one of the main characters in the story is. Angie Marie defines where she finds inspiration. And she has it in literature, culture, travel, music, and scented oils. You can see a little bit of overlap with the music. We know that JCB likes to travel. We don't see, I guess if you want to tie literature to writing, that could be another tie-in. But her different ones are culture, travel, and scented oils. Those are a little bit different. Where they overlap is the literature and the music. I think that's important to look for that because maybe in this particular chapter, not the whole book as a whole, because by this point, this is our third list of inspiration that now, with our third list of 5, right? 3 and 5, another big number. That's 15 things to look for throughout the book. Could be possible. I'm not sure I want to go down that road for right now. But I do like, because it's her list of things that bring her inspiration, I don't mind looking in this specific chapter for these tie-ins, looking for literature, for culture, travel, music, and oils. I think you're going to have a hard time finding oils. That could be either an acronym or something creative there. But anyways, that's what I got for chapter 6. Chapter 7, this one's one of the weaker ones I found. It starts out strong. If you're looking for clues, it starts out strong with the double, triple alliteration, right? Double sets of 3. So unadulterated, unabashed, and unabated, followed a couple sentences down by herding 100 hamsters, right? So to me, because this is 7 is I write down, 7 is a parenting, right? 17 is a parenting chapter, and that one chapter is about parents, right? It starts out being a dad of 2 young children, and it ends with my parents are smiling right now. I was a similar child. Very clear that's a parenting focused chapter, and both of those have the 2 sets of 3 alliteration. I thought, man, wouldn't it be so easy if there's another set of 3 in alliterations? And tell me what you think. I think I found something that's close to it. This is on page 75, and we have the L's. Here we go. We know that Amelia departed this world doing what she loved, living without limits and exploring new horizons. So, I mean, there is a hyphen right after loved, so I don't know if you would count that. I didn't really see any other sets of 3 with alliteration, right? So that's the one I found. Amelia departed this world doing what she loved, living without limits. So let me know what you think there. Now, how would we apply that? I don't know if I'm necessarily want to get into that this video, applying everything. I'm just looking to get it out there and sharing it with you because I brought this up a week ago and I hadn't done it yet. But I don't know. We could look and see where she lived without where she lived without limits and see how we could apply that. I don't know. So I just took her out. I just walked her because I knew I was going to do this video. So she's fine. She's just really clingy. COVID dogs, you know. They always want your full attention all the time. All right. Chapter 8 we're going to. This chapter is a music chapter. Music or arts. And here, interestingly enough, for a character who's, Charles, right? For as much someone who's based on art, it does bring up him and music quite a bit. Page 78, describes him as a musician also. I mean, it makes sense. Someone very artistically minded might have dabbled in all forms of art, right? And page 81, again, talks about tending the fields and played music. So we get another music tie-in, which again, that section right there, I don't think adds much to the paragraph. So I do like that it's reinforcing the music again. In all other times I've turned to chapter 8, I've never really made use of the calendar at the very end. Never. In any other times I've approached it, any other dives I've done this chapter, I've never really made any call-outs. And one of the reasons I had was for, one, it's too obvious. I don't like that. 2, there was such a major error in the months that I thought if this was a major clue, or it factored into the solve in some way, he would have double-checked it. I mean, that's one of the last things I do whenever I reveal a poem. I double-check the steps it would take to walk through or the way I intend for people to walk through. So in my mind, that was a major reason for not even counting this. I think it's a red herring. I think it's meant to throw you off. I think it's something to get distracted by. He talks about, on page 84, he goes on a lot about the Hopi. He says, if I sound overly plussed, sound, right, that's one of the things we're looking for, about Hopi history, forgive me, I find the tradition and resilience of these people inspirational, right? So that could say, you could look at that 2 ways. 1, he talks a lot about because he personally finds it interesting. 2, we're looking for whatever drives him for inspiration, and if he finds inspiration in the history, what better than a calendar, right, to determine that? I just couldn't get over that there was a printing error in the first edition of the book, and I have the first edition, so the error is pretty glaring there. I just thought, man, if that was important, he would have addressed it, or he would have double-checked that section. But here we are, still several months in and no treasure found, so trying to branch out with our thinking. So maybe it does factor in. And one thing I would look at is the 2 months that scream music, right? When that would be, oddly enough, it's the month that's repeated, the error. And at first everyone thought that it wasn't an error, but then he corrected it later. So it's the July, August, and we have the flute ceremonies. That's the part I'm looking in. Yeah, you could say there's music with dancing, but there's so many dances, so many months with dances throughout the whole book, throughout the whole year, that I would just kind of discount everything. Unless the point is you look for the months with no dances, which that's October, November, December. So the winter. Right, because that's a ceremony. It doesn't say dance or musical instrument. Everything else has a dance in it. So I don't know. That's just music was brought up several times in a chapter about an artist. 3 times, I believe, about his history, about Charles and he does music at certain points. So just thought that was interesting. All right, chapter 9. Here we go. This is going to be where'd it go? Chapter 9 is going to be a spirituality, which is pretty obvious. I mean, it takes the 2 stories in here about a church. One is about, I think he describes it a little bit like a cult, but at the end he does refrain from making judgment. And 2, it's a tie into a was it Baptist, a regular church service, which he describes in one section as a what does it say, a dry, somber Baptist hymnal, right? So a little bit of a drier service, followed by a short sermon. But it does say it's his mother's, one of her mother's favorite, right? It's my mother's favorite gathering time of year, which is a direct quote. That's page 92. Time of year is a pretty interesting callback to the very last chapter where we talked about it wasn't just 1 month that was without music. It was 3 months. So that could be a time of year or a season, because 3 goes into 12 nicely, splits into 4 seasons, right? So that's what I got from chapter 9. You know, a little bit interesting. 2 types of churches. One really under archaeologist study several hundreds of years later, maybe even thousands of years later, it became apparent the tricks or the manipulation that was used by the church. So I wonder if that's like some kind of commentary that, you know, hundreds of years later, maybe archaeologists study modern churches, the tricks used, manipulation will become apparent. I don't know if that's taking things a little bit too far. But I do think that's a pretty interesting tie-in. This is a confirmation bias chapter, so either way, I do think this is a significant chapter. I just didn't find exactly too much to do in the details of the churches and spirituality. For a chapter focused on churches, it seems like when a chapter is overtly about religion, there's not like a religious tie-in. But when the chapter is about something else, then he brings in spirituality, like when the other chapters that mention faith and hope and stuff like that. So just an interesting little note. Moving on to 10. All right, we've got a couple more left. This one, out of all the ones in the first 12, seemed kind of weak to me as far as finding direct symbolism, because this one I have marked down 10 as a personal story / humor. Don't see really a lot of humor unless you're finding humor in the fact that, you know, there's a child crying, sobbing, snot and tears, kind of like how I feel like my nose right now is snotty with all the allergies. But it is a personal story. It is kind of a teaching moment. My dad was teaching me about resiliency. Resilience, you know, is again an important callback to the chapter 2 chapters ago, when he talks about he was inspired by the find the traditions and resilience of the people inspirational. So it's interesting to me how many times a chapter will directly reference or have a direct callback to 1 or 2 chapters before it, right? So that's pretty interesting right there. Let's see, going down. Yeah, this one I don't have a lot. I just don't have a lot for. If you want to make a broader connection to the loss and how the loss he experienced as a child, I think it's a little bit of a stretch, but you could make the tie-in to the loss that Jackie O felt and experienced as a growing up. You know, the famous loss again right there in that Cadillac open top with her husband president right in front of her. Later on, or you know, her well documented losses throughout life with her family. So that's a little bit of a stretch in my opinion. The quotes are interesting, talking about life is a test. Many times, you know, tests, you're looking for answers to tests, quizzes. Again, I didn't find a lot that screams to me in this chapter, especially with the tie-ins that I gave it. You know, I could have been wrong. This chapter could not be personal and humor. It could be a spirituality or a writing one, but we'll have to go back and take a closer look at that one. I mean, there is on page 97, talks about, it didn't take me long to realize that a legacy such as hers can be easily accompanied by misconceptions. So misconceptions could be an interesting tie-in. Talk about cognitive bias, or confirmation bias, not cognitive bias. So here's something about misconceptions. Maybe we have misconceptions about something. Maybe he's trying to tell us. Talks about Jackie often got observed through the filter of cameras, not by the clear lens of reality. Maybe that's a whole nother thing we need to find. We're looking for the lens in this book to look through. I might explore that later. That could be something something to go down. All right, let's go down to chapter 11. All right, chapter 11 I have marked down as a writing. So we're looking for a writing clue. And this one I think fits well with the writing clue because he kind of had a little bit of a creative leeway, right, for this story. It's a made-up journal that he's supposedly writing and we're reading from. So he could have orchestrated it and put whatever he wanted in there without having to stick. I mean, he stuck a little bit stuck sort of close to the actual true narrative, but he could have put some stuff in there, right? 11. So I have written down it's fictional account. The Pamperos, right? The wind that he defined for us. Pamperos are special winds, though not special anyway, which was good, right? So that's pretty interesting the way he described. Talks about when a Pampero, this is direct quotes, when a Pampero was formed, page 104, it could blow down the waters of the Rio de la Plata with immense power. Then this is where we get into a bunch of numbers, right? This page is known for its numbers. The speed, the kilometers, how many people. There's a whole solve about, using the waves and how many people are there. It's one of those math problems where you take a boat and you ferry 6 and 1 remains behind and then 2 leave. So how many, right? You can get into all that. But for me, I'm focused on the Pampero because he defines it for us, and it's got 2 exclamation points on page 104, and the sound it makes, because I think sound is something we're also looking for. And I said that at the end of my video where we look through all the chapters in page in part 1. The Pampero, if you look, makes 3 different kinds of sounds. It starts off as a whistle, and then it goes on to a howl and a moan. So let's see if we want to read it. If we want to read it directly. Top of page 103. He didn't notice the wind had picked up. The rustling tarp now added a whistle. Then we go down to page 104. And then we talk about outside the wind howled and moaned. Right, so 3 different sounds. We do have an interesting trees bent their sides at 45 degree. Is that something we put into a part with, as we're building this map, building this solve, is that going to play into a part? I don't know, but it's one of the very few degrees mentioned in part 1, so I definitely want to write that and circle it somewhere. But that's what I got for chapter 11, is focus on the Pamperos, the sound that they make, because I think sound is one of the overall themes. Ties really nicely to music, and we look at the whistles, the howls, and the moans, all right? Maybe see where else in the book something is whistles or howls and moans. That's going to be some research I have to do later. Okay, last one, chapter 12. Chapter 12 I have down for a spirituality one, all right, which is not obvious right away, but I do see a lot of belief, which I meant, again, remember what I said, allergies. I take Zyrtec and a couple other things, just not doing it today. Okay, let's see if I can wrap this up without sounding too gross on camera. I said earlier that when the subject of a chapter seems overtly about religion, like a church or a priest or a religious painting, I don't think that religion is the clue in there. But when a chapter is about something else and he slips in spirituality, I think that's where you pay attention, right? So the chapter on the surface is about a massive gold rush, but there is a lot of belief in this chapter. We're looking at page 114. Talks about the belief that people had to leave their comfort, leave their home, leave the active naval service, and rush out to the gold fields, right? So and some of them were successful in this treasure hunt. A lot of people are going to rush off, and someone eventually will be successful, right? I don't think this is going to go unsolved for all of history. I think somebody will be somebody will be successful. It'll be in the minority, that's for sure. Some buddies, right? Because there's going to be 5 boxes found. And I'm going to end it with something that's kind of controversial. That's why I'm leaving it for the ending. So there's this whole debate, right, about part 2 stays in part 2, part 1 stays in part 1. There's some people that believe, you don't use any of part 1, and JCB said this and that. It's really hard to believe all that when you find sections like this. Page 114. The miners began calling California the Golden State. I've now called California my home for over 20 years. It's a place I love, right? How do you read that and not immediately think of, let me flip to it. This would be a lot more impactful if I already had it marked. The past and the future box, where he talks about, where he talks about, its surface would often reflect a state of gold from the sunshine through my window, right? When he also says, where's it go? Eager for me to dispatch it quickly somewhere I loved, right? And that's in part 2. That's in the small box, the past and future box. It's really hard when you have direct words like that, and how do you not apply them to, oh, it's California, right? So, again, I mean, we've got no choice but to look at JCB, take him at his word. But we do know he's capable, he's human, right? He's capable of flaws. Especially, he tried to limit the amount of people that saw this book, the amount of people that proofread it, right? So it's not out of the realm that he missed something or overlooked something. I mean, we all know the errata list is quite long by now, right? So, I don't know. Do with that as you will. Do with that as you may. Do whatever. Thanks for sticking with me with this video. Apologize for the sound if it's a little bit nasally. Apologize. Yeah, I'm working through these allergies here. All right. Again, try to do something else here in a week. We're going to continue down the list of using that initial list of 5 things and looking for those 5 things in the chapters and seeing what we can take. And then the next video after that, we'll try to put all those together and see if it comes up with something that helps us find where this box is. All right, guys, take care. Talk to you later. Bye.